What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about tabletop glue-ups. We're going to talk about some of the methods that I use for gluing up tabletops, or really any panel glue-ups for that matter. Basically 3 ways to glue up a panel that I use. First thing I want to talk about is clamp. I personally prefer, especially for a large panel glue-up like a tabletop, some good parallel clamps. You can get by with pretty much any other kind of clamp as long as you've got enough clamping width. But the thing I like about the parallel clamps is that they give even parallel pressure. As opposed to like an F-style clamp, there's a lot more opportunity for those joints to slip or you to get uneven pressure on those joints. So basically, my 3 methods of gluing up a panel: biscuit joiner, dowels, just straight glue. Let's talk first about the first and easiest method. It's just gluing 2 panels together. You're just going to lather up some glue on these edges, and then using whatever clamps you've got, just clamp them down. The big thing that you want to make sure when you're using this method is that your boards don't slip. That's why I don't really prefer this method, especially on like large panel glue-ups. If I do a glue-up like this, I typically use these Jorgensen like easy hold clamps just to clamp those joints together. That way, as it's drying, as I'm applying pressure, those joints aren't going to slip apart. So the next method we'll talk about are dowels. These are great. I've got this Rockler jig here. This is a 1/2-inch doweling jig. Comes with the jig, comes with a drill bit, stop collar. This is a very simple and very inexpensive way to get not only some added support, but a great way to make sure when you're gluing up a panel that your joints aren't going to slip apart, that they're going to stay together, they're going to stay aligned. So something like this is really, really easy to use. First thing you're going to want to do is obviously you're going to want to line your boards up. One thing I will mention before I start this is if I'm gluing up a tabletop, I always want to make sure that my grain is going opposite directions for each board. I don't want the boards going the same way, because if it does cut, it's just going to cut in a much more exaggerated manner. I'm just going to strike 2 lines. So if you can see, there's lines on these jigs. These lines right here correspond with the 2 holes that are in this jig. I don't ever go off this middle line. I always go off the 2 lines that line up with the holes, mainly because I want to make sure that whenever I line this up with the lines I've made on the boards, that hole is going to be centered with the lines on the boards. So like I was showing, you're going to line that up, and then you're going to want to clamp this down. So once that's clamped in place, you're simply just going to drill. Then you're going to want to line up the next one, drill away. So we're going to line that up, clamp it down. So now that these are drilled out, what I would do is I'm going to lather these up with some glue, drop some glue down in these holes for the dowels, and then I'm just going to push them together as much as I can by hand, and then tighten these joints up, going back and forth on each clamp to ensure even pressure. And then I would sit and I'd wait for this glue to dry. The last method, and my personal favorite method, is biscuit joiner. I'm not really looking for any added strength most of the time when I'm doing these tabletop glue-ups. If you know anything about wood glue itself is stronger than the wood in most cases. Plenty of people out there that have done tests and showed the strength of wood glue. So this is solely just for alignment purposes for me. The main reason that I like the biscuit joiner more than the dowel jig is just because using this, I'm going to have to move and clamp and move and clamp and move and clamp, whereas this, I can just line it up pull the trigger and I can just keep going. I don't have to reclamp something every time. Doing a full-size, like 6 to 8 foot table with this, not that there's anything wrong with it, but it takes forever. So let's show you how I use the biscuit joiner for gluing up a tabletop. All right, so as far as the biscuit joiner goes, I'm going to use the exact same method as when I was using the doweling jig. I'm going to get my boards lined up, I'm going to alternate the direction of the grain, and I'm going to strike some lines. So those lines are striked. This is where the main difference between this doweling jig and the biscuit joiner is. It's just so much faster, so much more efficient for me and the way that I work. Because all I've got to do is line it up, line it up, line it up, line it up. And as you can see, most of the time I could have this thing realigned and ready to cut a second hole before this thing even stops spinning. Now I also will say, because I'm sure somebody's going to point it out, I had this thing set up for cutting some Z-clips for a desk that I just finished building. So these are not centered. I know that. Somebody's going to point it out. I don't care. It's just demonstration purposes. If I was actually gluing this up, I would make sure that these slots are centered. Actually, I kind of do them a little off-centered. I'm not going to talk about biscuit ghosting. If you're curious and want to know what that is, you can look that up. Basically, short version is you can see tabletops that have been put together with biscuits, and when the biscuits are too close to the surface sometimes, and sometimes centered, depending on how thick your board is, like if this was 3/4 of an inch and I centered it, there's a chance that those biscuits could ghost and you could actually see the little football shape on the top of the table. So a lot of times I will actually just go slightly farther down than center, just a little bit, just a hair, just to reduce the risk of the chance that I would get any ghosting from these biscuits. And I would glue these up the exact same way that I did the dowels. I'm gonna put some glue down in the slots here. I'm going to put my biscuits in these slots, and then I'm going to put some glue on the surfaces of these. I'm going to get them put together as tight as I can with my hands. The one thing that you'll notice with the biscuits is they do have some play left and right because the way the shape that the saw cuts is they can slide back and forth against each other. They're not going to stay perfectly straight like the dowels will. So you do kind of have to watch out for that as you're gluing these things up. But just like that, I would glue it up. I would wait for the glue to dry. So that's it. That's my 3 preferred methods for gluing up a tabletop. If you've ever glued up a panel and had alignment issues, you know how much of a pain that is to try to sand and fix. That being said, there's nothing wrong with using any of these methods. Using just glue, other than buying glue, free. That's a perfectly solid method for gluing up a panel. I still use that method pretty often, especially in some smaller panel glue ups. You can find some other versions of this thing on like Amazon and stuff. I preferred the Rockler version. I was ordering some other stuff from Rockler. I just threw it in there. It works great. I have no complaints with it, other than the fact that it's a much slower process than trying to use the biscuit joiner. The last method, like I said, that I really like this. This is my go-to method for gluing up a tabletop. I find that it's fast, it's efficient, and it works. The thing about woodworking is there's never one way to do something, which is what makes woodworking such an awesome thing to do. You could do the same project multiple times, and each time have a different way to do it. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You're going to find some people that are going to tell you, no, that's not right, don't do that. But if it works, it works. That's not wrong. So gluing up a tabletop, it can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. There are just some things that make it far easier. Obviously, bigger clamps make it easier. I've got these 24-inch Jorgensen parallel clamps down here just for demonstration purposes. I do have some much larger 48-inch Bessie clamps over there. I really like the parallel clamps, especially for panels. I just find that the pressure that you get, the even parallel pressure from these clamps, makes it so much easier than fiddling with some other kind of clamps. The number one takeaway from this is glue it up how you want to glue it up, and don't overthink it. Try to do things that are going to make it more simpler for you. That's why I purchased this biscuit joiner, because I wanted something that was going to make it a little bit faster and a little bit more efficient. So make sure when you're gluing up your tops, you're getting good pressure, using the right amount of glue, and if you're having trouble with alignment, look for some tools that can help you with that alignment. Even if it's just buying some extra clamps, just so you can put some clamps on those joints to keep them in a line. The biggest thing with a glue up is pressure pushing the joints together and keeping the boards aligned. As long as you can do that, there's no wrong way to glue up a tabletop. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did find this video helpful, let me know in the comments. I'll try to leave a link down in the description to a lot of the stuff that I use for gluing up tabletops. If there's any other tips out there, any other woodworking ideas that you need help with, let me know. I'll try to make a video, see if I can give you guys some help. There's plenty of people out there giving information. Like I stated before, there's no wrong way to do something. There's just different ways to achieve the same goal. So get out there, get building, and we'll see you guys later.